Today on 21st Century Business, explore state-of-the-art technology, innovative business strategies, insights from cutting-edge corporations around the globe, a visionary look into the answers of tomorrow, today. Business leaders, business solutions, 21st Century Business.
Welcome to 21st Century Business. I'm Jackie Bales. As a business enters the global economy, they discover a universe of opportunity. However, one of the most immediate challenges they face is the language barrier. While a business may employ a multilingual staff, quite often they learn the hard way that just because someone speaks another language, it doesn't make them a qualified translator of that language. Translating industry-specific technical language demands a certain qualified set of skills that's usually beyond a multilingual employee. Universe Technical Translation tackles this problem head-on, and joining me today from the company is President Marion Rifkind. Welcome, Marion.
Thank you very much for inviting me today.
Marion, can you tell me more about the problems a company or government entity face when translating key material?
Yes, of course. The main problem is that both of those organizations want a good quality translation. They want it done in a timely fashion, and they want to get the best price that's out there. We are constantly dealing with deadlines, whether it be that they submit their proposal in the foreign language in time for the tender submission, whether they're translating a presentation that they're going to give that afternoon, or whether they're going on a foreign trip and they're leaving on the plane and they need those documents in the foreign language that they took days and weeks to prepare in English, but they need fast turnaround in the foreign language.
Right. Well, it's not hard to imagine either that a small error in translation could have a significant negative impact. Tell us how your company fits into this picture and the solutions that you bring, Marion.
Well, that can happen. We're all human, and this can happen and could have disastrous consequences. For example, let me just share with you, there's a technical piece of equipment that's used, and there's a technical manual that needs to be translated, and in that technical manual it says, turn the switch to the right. But unfortunately, the translator writes, turn the switch to the left. Well, if that were to happen, it could mean that the whole place could blow up, and we can't imagine the consequences of that, and we would certainly be out of business in 5 minutes.
Oh my gosh.
So we try to avoid such problems by not only using a technical translator with the right kind of background, but we check every single piece of work that we do to make sure that there aren't errors, because people are unfortunately human. But I'd like to share another story with you on this. A number of years ago, one of our clients had a contract that they wanted to translate into the Azerbaijani language, which is the language of Azerbaijan. And they gave it to somebody locally to translate, got it back, and started the contract. There was a sentence in there that said, engineers should not be paid more than $500 a day. Then they started to receive invoices, and the invoices were for $500, $600, $700, $800, $900. So they were wondering, what's going on here? The contract said not more than $500. So they thought, well, maybe we should have the translation checked. They sent us the translation to look at. And in the Azerbaijani language, to make a verb negative, you have to stick the letter M in the middle of the word. And the translator had forgotten to do that. And that's probably because it wasn't checked by a second person. So this was the whole problem. We have a whole file on the letter M, and it has nothing to do with my name, Marion.
Oh, that's funny.
And the good side of the story is this company has been our client ever since.
Wow. That's incredible. Well, in this 21st Century Business Field Report, we'll get a fascinating glimpse of Universe Technical Translation in action.
Language translation services are crucial in the business world, as more and more businesses are realizing the immense opportunity foreign markets hold. Selecting the right translation service like Universe Technical Translation allows your company to enter a foreign market with confidence in their products and services.
Universe is very capable and does excellent work. When I work with them, I know the job's going to be done right, and it's going to be done on time. And almost more important to me is I don't have to spend my time managing them. They're people who understand our industry, and almost more important, they understand our jargon. So translations are done right, and they're done quickly. They've also worked with our graphic designers to make sure that those translations are rolled correctly into HTML for digital newsletters and into video for accurate subtitles.
Universe offers technical translation services in a wide range of different industries, including oil and gas, mining, energy, and petrochemical.
English is the language of the oil and gas industry, but that doesn't mean that everyone speaks English. And even those who do speak it fluently, it's a courtesy if we provide things in their own language. Universe has helped us with both internal and external communications. For our internal communications, they've translated things like our company policies and our core values. Those let employees around the world know who Wood Group is and what we stand for and what we expect from them. On the external communication side, they've helped our marketing efforts. They've translated things like our trade show graphics into the language of the countries that we're exhibiting in. They've translated our customer newsletter into 8 different languages. And they translate press releases into the language of the customer who we're asking to approve them. So hopefully that helps them to approve them more easily and hopefully a little bit faster.
This office is our head office, and here in this office we have lots of different people doing lots of different jobs. We have editors because we work in 60 languages, and every single document that is translated into the foreign languages is edited by a second person. So a number of the editors are here. If they're not here, then it's done by some of our off-site editors. We have project coordinators and project managers. We also have a desktop publishing formatting department here. We have accounting here, we have marketing here, we have sales, and we have management. In addition to this office, we have 3 other offices. We have an office in London, and the London office takes care of some work out of Europe and clients in the UK. We also have an office in Moscow, Russia, and then we have an office in Baku, Azerbaijan. And the reason we have that office is we won a part of the AIOC contract back in the 80s, which was known as the contract of the century for Azerbaijan. And they asked us to set up an office there. And from that office, we translate English to Azeri, which is the Azerbaijani language, and English to Russian. And in addition to that, we also provided on-site personnel at the BP office to translate from English to Azeri and English to Russian.
I strongly recommend Universe because they're so capable. I've recommended them to my counterpart for the Eastern Hemisphere, and they have started using Universe's office. Universe has an office in London. It's very close and very convenient for our folks in the UK, and I've recommended them to other people here in Houston who have translation needs.
Marion, why is this an important service to provide?
Well, companies and government entities need to communicate with their counterparts in other countries where they speak other languages. I know that many Americans think the whole world should speak English, but that's not the case. So in order to better communicate with their partners, they need to do that in the foreign language. And this is a service that we are providing. Once a company has a contract, they need to send correspondence, they need to provide agreements, technical manuals, brochures, they need to speak to them in the foreign language, and this is the kind of service that we are providing.
And into which languages do you provide this translation service?
Well, we provide it into about 60 different languages, but we also provide it out of 60 different languages. So we translate from English into German, but we also translate from German into English. I have one of my brochures here, and we have in here written many of the languages we translate into and from, but we have a little graphic at the top which says 10 most wanted languages, because even though it's 60 languages, we are not doing 60 languages every day, every week, every month.
Right.
But we have probably about a top 10 that are favorites. And interestingly enough, number 1 is Russian in Houston, Texas.
Wow.
That's another question.
But with their growing economy, that kind of doesn't surprise me.
Then we have Spanish, French, Chinese, Portuguese, German, Japanese, Arabic, Italian, and Ukrainian.
Wow.
That probably is our top 10.
Wow.
Last year was an interesting year because despite being in business for more than 31 years, all of a sudden a lot of new languages were appearing that we hadn't been asked for before, like Serbian, Croatian, Moldavian, Kurdish, Romanian, a lot of Eastern European languages, I suppose, when it comes down to it. But I also got inquiries about Afrikaans, about Faroese, and I don't know where we're going to go this year.
Lots. So it depends on what's going on in the world at large.
Absolutely, yes.
Can you explain the qualifications of an ideal translator for us, Marion?
Yes. A translator needs to know 2 languages. Whether they know 3, 4, 5 or more, that doesn't really help us. They need to know 2 very well. Okay? We always use people into their native language. So if I'm going to translate into Russian, and I happen to speak Russian, I would not use somebody like me because it's not my native language. I will use someone who was born in a Russian-speaking country, who was educated there, had worked in that language, and therefore would do best into their first language.
Wow.
If you use somebody like me, then I would translate into English, because however long I studied Russian, I will never be as good into Russian as I will be in English. So our company policy is always to use someone into their native language. Secondly, since we're dealing with so many different technical and various fields, we can be translating technical documents about engineering or geology and so on. We can also be translating agreements and finance documents and brochures and literature and drawings. So those again are like another language. You cannot translate a geological document unless you studied geology in university or college. And if you're a geologist, you certainly shouldn't be translating a legal document. So we're very fastidious on the background, education, and experience of our translators.
Wow.
If we dare break the rule, we pay for it.
Interesting. It seems like a lot of companies may be breaking the rule, because when I have looked at, for instance, brochures that arrive at the house, or like a product manual, and you look at it and you go, wow, who wrote this? You know, it's just, it's laughable. It is so silly, the things that come out, and oftentimes, you know, appliance manuals or something. So they could use your service then, sounds like.
Oh, absolutely.
You do those kinds of services as well for consumer products and all of that kind of thing?
Oh, any kind of document that needs to go into a foreign language, we are able to handle.
And the significance of it, I mean, companies sure wouldn't want to have a product that arrives with a document that is laughable, but I'll tell you what, we see a lot of them.
Well, I don't think so, because that reflects on the product. And if you sell a product to someone and you need to go to the manual because it doesn't work, then if there's nonsense written in there, not only does the manual look bad, but that creates a poor image for the company that sold you the product. You may not go back and buy their product again.
Absolutely, absolutely. So Marion, what is the difference between translation and interpretation? Those are 2 different things, right?
Absolutely. Translation is to do with written word, okay? So we will translate documents, which could be agreements, leaflets, brochures, manuals, technical drawings, websites, audio scripts, subtitles. All that has to do with writing, okay? Even letters. And some of those are the most difficult because what people are trying to say in their correspondence. So that's all to do with writing or typing, but it's the written word. Interpretation is oral, it's verbal. It's like if you were speaking a foreign language right now, let's say you were speaking Russian and I couldn't speak Russian and you were trying to hold this interview with me, we would have to have an interpreter. And interpretation come in several formats. Consecutive, that means that if you ask me the question in Russian, you would pause, the interpreter would interpret it for me in English, I would pause, and the interpreter would interpret my answer back in Russian. So one after another. Simultaneous interpretation is what you see at conferences and the UN. And that's when they interpret instantly. And they need special headsets and equipment to do that. But that is much more difficult, and there are a lot less of those people around.
Wow.
And then there's what's called telephone interpretation, and that is a remote type of interpretation that is available today, helped by the computer, and that is used in hospitals, in medical situations, and quite often with utility companies, and we provide that service too.
Simultaneous interpretation equipment includes 4 soundproof booths which separate our interpreters from what we call floor voice. This equipment as well as number of transmitters and receivers to accommodate any possible logistics. This equipment allows our clients to sharply reduce time for the incoming dignitaries to deliver their speech.
Now, you talk about working with companies outside the U.S. Is that translating to, translating out of? How is that working for you, primarily?
Okay. Well, we work with companies outside the U.S. sometimes because they're affiliates of companies we're working with in the U.S., and we've been recommended to them. We also have direct contracts with some companies outside the U.S. In such countries as France, Spain, Switzerland, then West Africa, Equatorial Guinea, the Congo, Chad, Dubai, and so on and so forth.
Wow.
And we can be working for them either way. We can be going English to the foreign language or the foreign language to English. A number of them will use the foreign language into English because of what I mentioned before. We have a lot of native English speakers here.
Yes, we do.
And so they can do a much better job translating from the foreign language into English than if you try to find one in one of those countries where there won't be so many.
So why should a company use Universe and not have work done themselves overseas?
Well, because we offer a package. We offer a turnkey product. We have extensive qualified translation resources, qualified in the different subject fields that I mentioned before. They are professional writers. See, if you use your employee to do the work, and they happen to be working in the legal department, how are they going to deal with a geological document? So we are using professional writers. We check every piece of work. Companies today like to have all kinds of fancy formats, and so we have to deal with that and replicate it exactly how it was in English or the foreign language. So we have an extensive desktop publishing and formatting department that work in their own language to do that. And then every piece of work is proofread. So I think we can end up giving them a much more quality document than they would if they just gave it to their local employee.
So tell us about that, Marion. How has your company changed through technology in the 31 years you've been in operation?
A huge amount. And I've been right there from the beginning to now. I started the company by buying a Selectric typewriter, and the great technological advantage at that point was it had whiteout that you could use in the typewriter. And then we would send the documents by DHL and just pray they would make the deadline.
Oh, wow.
So with the advent of the computer, where we can change translations if we don't like what was written there, and that was a miracle in those days. The problem with that, though, that we had, I remember the very first job when we used a word processor or computer, and the client found out that they could keep changing the document. So they were sending us changes ad nauseum. But of course, it's all to the best. So the computer and all the advantages of technology today and the smartphone and so on and so forth has helped us hugely. It means we can work all over the world. We can work while other countries are sleeping. We can access people who are qualified. You see, going back to what I said before, we do not believe that one person can handle all different fields. No jack of all trades and master of none. We will go where we need to go to find the person who is qualified in that field. And it might be 2 doors down in Houston, Texas, or it might be on the other side of the world.
Wow. I would imagine technology has also raised people's expectations of how fast things can be done, right?
Absolutely. You know, however, they took days and weeks to prepare their documents. And I just had a call yesterday, I think it was, and this company said, we have this document to translate. It was an ad to translate in French. I understand you can do it in an hour or two. And I said, well, how long did it take you to write your ad? I said, and he said, oh, a few days. I said, well, we want to give the same attention to your ad in French that you did in English. We won't need quite as long, but we don't want to dash it off because this is something you wrote that was clever, and we want to think about it and not just stick it in there in French.
Good answer. Good answer. Now, I've heard of something called translation memory. What is that exactly?
Okay, well, that's another benefit of technology. Okay, so translation memory is taking documents that have already been translated. So let's say we had an agreement that we had translated into Italian. So we have the English document and we now have the Italian translation. So what we do is we load it into a database so that when that document comes back again in 6 months or a year with a number of changes, we don't have to go and translate it all over again. We find that document and we load the new document into the database and we pull out what was there before, and then it takes some of the terms and phrases and enters those into the new text, and then we can translate what's left and edit the whole document.
Wow.
And we at Universe have created some of our own software which allows us to do this in various ways. And this helps the quality and consistency for our translation, because what we're trying to do here is to reuse translation, not to recreate the wheel, so we don't have to charge our customer from scratch, and can keep a consistency in the terminology. So if a company called something by a certain way the first time, we want to do that the second time, because if we send it to a second translator, they may well call it something different. It could be right, but it would be different. And we have created some of our own software to do this. We have something called UTM, Universe Terminology Manager, UniReference, UniCAD, which is something that works with AutoCAD drawings, and we are creating a translation memory program called UniMem.
Wow. Well, that's wonderful. I mean, that really speaks to the precision with which you operate. That's amazing to have put that much thought and effort into it. What is your opinion of machine translation?
Well, that is supposed to be magic. That is when you put a document in there and it comes out in the foreign language. And there's a lot of research and development going on with this right now. And we have attended several meetings and conferences of the American Translation Memory Association. But our work demands zero error tolerance. And we at this time don't feel that we can use this kind of software. However, we do see that it does have some use and may have some use in the future for certain specific types of work. A weather forecast could be done this way. A draft translation, if you receive something in Urdu and you have absolutely no idea what's in there, then it could be run through machine translation to give you some idea, but don't take it for its full face value. And also computer companies that have technical manuals that they want to translate in 25 languages and they do it every year and they need to do it fast. Well, if they were to use this using some of the translation that they had done before, it could be workable, providing that there's post-editing done after it.
Interesting. You know, I know there are a lot of translation companies out there, Marion. What makes your company stand out from all the rest?
Well, there's no silver bullet, but we have been around for 31 years, so I think that says something. However, we believe we're as good as our last job. We can work for a company for 10 years, and if we were to blow it, we know that we would be out. So we take our work very seriously. We treat every job as a brand new job. We are in the service industry, and we try our best to give the very best service that we can and to accommodate our clients.
Wow. Well, Marion, such an illuminating discussion. Thank you so much for giving us a look into your business, and thank you for attending today.
Well, thank you for inviting me, and I was very glad to meet you, Jackie.
And thank you for watching. For 21st Century Business, I'm Jackie Bales.